All right, guys, so for this video, we are talking about intervals of positive and negative y values. Positive and negative y values. Do not get this confused with increasing and decreasing y values. Just looking at positive and negative y values, okay? So again, got myself a graph, okay? Got myself a function. All right, so let me label my axes. Got my axes. This is my x-axis, okay? All we're going to be doing with positive and negative y values is we're going to be looking at where my values are above and below this axis, where it's above and below the x-axis. So I'm just going to separate it out into parts. It's the easiest thing to do, guys. All right, I got one part there. All right, I've got another part here. So I've got this one. This would be 2. And then let me separate this one out into 3. Okay, so I got 3 parts to this graph, all separated by the x-axis. Okay. So part 1, I got my y-axis. Is up here or down here positive? Is up here or down here a positive y value? Okay. This would be a positive y value. Down here would be a negative y value. So again, for intervals of positive and negative y values, I don't need to know what my y values are. What the units are on my y-axis does not matter. It doesn't matter. If you start trying to think about that, you're just going to confuse yourself. Okay? I don't need to know what it is. I don't need to know what my y values are. I just need to know that the sign out in front of them is a positive sign or a negative sign. That's all I care about. Okay? So, if we labeled this part 1, part 2, and part 3, okay? Part 1 would be positive or negative. Part 1 would be positive or negative. All right? It would be positive. Go ahead and write positive. Number 2, is it positive or negative? All right, number 2 is negative. And is part 3 positive or negative? Part 3 is positive. Okay? Part 3 is positive. So, now that I've got them labeled, I've got all my parts labeled, I'm going back to exactly what I was doing with intervals the first time, okay? I'm going to look at where where my intervals are going to change. My intervals are going to change and stop where values become positive and negative, where they switch between positive and negative. So the x-axis is my change point, okay? My x-axis is where my values are changing from positive to negative. So if I've got negative infinity out here, right, we know this graph is going to go on forever. It's going to go on forever. And go on forever. So my interval is always going to start. Remember, negative infinity. That's where my first interval is going to start. Okay? Negative infinity to, let's say that's negative 4. Okay, so this is a positive interval, right? Because my values are positive. So I'm saying this is going to be a positive interval, positive y values. Okay, negative infinity to negative 4. Okay, negative infinity to negative 4 is my first interval, and it is positive. Okay, so now I got my negative intervals. So if I stopped a positive interval, it means I got to go to a negative interval. If I stopped it at being positive, it means I have to go to being negative. It's the only way I would stop this interval. So at negative 4, it picks up, right? Negative 4, we're going to pick back up. And it's going to be negative. My function will be negative y values until I get to 5 on the x-axis. Until I get to 5. So remember, I'm writing my intervals. Intervals get written as x to x. X to x. I'm looking for my x values. care about my y's. I don't care about what the y values are. I just care if they're positive or negative. Okay, so I've got negative 4 to 5, and then I stopped at 5, which means I got to pick up at 5. And I'm going to go off forever in the x direction, and y's are going to go up forever. So they're always going to be positive. I'm going to go up to infinity. Okay? All right? So that is what I mean when I'm asking about positive and negative y values. I'm just looking at where my graph, my function, is above the x-axis or below the x-axis. If it's above the x-axis, it's going to be a positive y value. If it's below the x-axis, it's going to be a negative y value. That's all I'm asking for. That's all you got to look for. But make sure you label it as parentheses, x comma x. I'm going from one x to another x. So that would be correct notation. Okay, just make sure you pay attention to that. This is not coordinate form. This is not x comma y. This is x comma x. I'm going from one x to another x. All right? Thanks, guys.